Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 29. Today's Thursday, April 23rd. And today we have a group of special guests from NCTE, an organization that has really been at the center of my teaching life, and I know yours as well, Penny.
It certainly has. And I used to attend the New Hampshire Council of Teachers of English when I first moved to New Hampshire. And then I met this man called Don Graves. And I had kids that were 5 and 8, and there was no way it was in our budget to go to NCTE. And he sponsored me and another local teacher and gave us grants to pay for registration because my district wouldn't pay for anything. And then we used frequent flyer miles and all, and I went to my first conference, and I've gone every year since, and it's been one of the most important things in my professional life.
Yeah, I mean, you and I go to a lot of conferences, but I think it's safe to say that NCTE is our favorite conference of all. And so we have with us today a leadership group from NCTE. So we're going to ask each of you to say hello, introduce yourself, and maybe a quick chat about what you are reading. So let's start with our good friend, Franki Sibberson.
Hi. So I teach 5th grade in Dublin, Ohio. And I'm trying really hard I'm really bad at reading for myself. I'm really good at reading for middle grade for my classroom. So I've tried really hard the last couple of months to read adult fiction. So I do have this, I'm such a fun age as a fun fiction, not fun, but it's a really good, strong fiction book that I feel like was the one that got me back into remembering how much I love adult fiction and why I need to read more of it. So that's my favorite
Franki,
right now.
Maybe say what your role, I think we all know, but maybe say for those who don't, what your role with NCTE.
I am past president of NCTE, so I'll continue to be past president through November.
I think it's incredible that as a 5th grade teacher, you somehow managed to be NCTE president.
It was a little tricky sometimes, but but I really think classroom teachers, we gotta get our voices out there, and it's easy not to, but I mean, I think it's interesting to my kids know, so.
Let's just go to horn. Go ahead, Leah.
All right, so I'm Leah Zuidema, and I serve as the president for the National Council of Teachers of English. And I actually got my start in this organization as an undergrad, and it happened on 2 fronts simultaneously. The supervising teacher, while I was doing my student teaching, her name is Anita Mires, and she gave me a gift membership to be in NCTE. And said this would be really important. You should read English Journal. I was preparing for being a high school teacher. She actually helped me get my first job as well. You know, that was before the Google. And you kind of went through the phone book and called schools and said, do you have an opening? And I ended up at Byron Center in Michigan. And so that was my familiarity with the publications. And then I also had a professor, one in the fall semester of my senior year, right before my student teaching. So Dr. Henry Barron said, okay, for this writing class, what you need to do is come up with some kind of writing project that you send in somewhere for publication. It just needs to be something meaningful, authentic to you. And so I was, learning about English Journal through my job that I had at the college library, and thought, oh, there's this column called Coming to Terms. I've been researching some things about English grammar and vocab. I think I'm going to send this in, and I was just over the moon when it got accepted. Like, if you want to win somebody's love, just flatter them with the acceptance of their little column piece, right? Undying love. So that was a piece of it. And then I was so fortunate to be in a state where English and language arts teachers were so active and connected. So Michigan Council of Teachers of English just enfolded new teachers and put us to work. And I think that's, a big piece of being in NCTE. That's how I got to know about it. Things that I now read, my career has changed a lot. I was an English teacher educator for a number of years, and now I'm at Dordt University as the Vice President for Online and Graduate Education. I promise you it's literacy work every day. Things I'm reading, I'm almost always reading something in fiction and in print. So right now I am reading The Last Report on the Miracles of Little No Horse by Louise Erdrich. She's just one of my favorite authors, and
Love her.
She's so rich, and at a time like this, just something good to read over a long time, because I find that I can't read a lot at a time right now. And I've heard others say that too. And then I always listen to something as well. And that's typically nonfiction. And I'm about like 37 minutes from the end of kind of a thriller, a documentary. It's called A Woman of No Importance by Sonia Purnell, and the subtitle is The Untold Story of the American Spy Who Helped Win World War II. So Virginia Hall is somebody you need to hear about.
Wow.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie, good morning.
Well, hey everyone, thank you for having us here. So I'm Valerie Kinloch. I am NCTE's Vice President. And my entrance into NCTE, I wish I could remember the exact dates and the moment. I don't, but what I do remember is being around a lot of teachers and writers and thinkers and creatives. And it seemed like most of them, if not all of them, were always connected to English teaching, English writing, and then eventually thinking about literacies in the plural. And so for me, I've always been enamored with books. I've always been enamored with the act and practice of teaching since I was a little kid. I would sit on the floor in a corner in any empty room where I could be by myself for a few minutes and just pick up a book and read, not realizing that that would lead me to where I am today. And so for me, coming into NCTE in the mid to late 90s, I think as a grad student, and then eventually more so as a first year tenure track faculty member, it was meaningful. And if anyone said to me then that at this very moment, I would be serving NCTE in a leadership role, I would have just laughed. So it's interesting to come full circle. And I think about that, especially in this current moment, because it's National Poetry Month. And I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of thinking with other people. I've been rereading Audre Lorde. I've been rereading Alice Walker. I've been thinking very deeply about one of my favorite poets, June Jordan, who is one of the most understudied African-American writers, particularly in the United States. And more recently, I've been enamored with this book. It's Black Dove, and it's by Ana Castillo.
Valerie.
It's an amazing, brilliant, beautiful book. It's talking about her family migration stories. It's talking about our interactions with the world, with the earth. It's talking about what happens when you have a kid who you love dearly and would do anything for, but you see that kid spiraling out of control. And then it's also talking about rejuvenation. And I just want to end by saying, I am so enamored with this book. I tend to read books over and over, but sometimes I don't. She ends her book, and I just want to say, especially given what we're dealing with and how appropriate that we're members of NCTE, but she ends her book by saying, today, we still have the difficulty of accepting that we are all here together. And then she goes on to say, we remain hopeful for humanity as a whole, even as we reluctantly contemplate the consequences of human impact on this earth. And so what connects us, not just as citizens from so many walks of life, but to our past and future, our stories. Day to day, we each form our own narratives of survival, of love, and of family. And I've dedicated my life to forming my stories. And I share this book with my faculty, staff, and students in the Pitt School of Education, where I'm dean. And I just wrote to them on Monday, opening with Ana Castillo. And she's amazing. And I think she gives us the energy to think about surviving during these difficult times.
Wow. Thank you.
Great suggestion. I participated in a book club with Ana Castillo many years ago. Her book, if you've not read So Far From God, 3 generations of family. It's beautiful, beautiful story. What a great, I can't wait to read this. Thanks for the recommendation.
Thank you.
So Franki and Leah and Valerie, and last but not least,
There you are. Are you
Alfredo.
unmuted? Hey.
I think I'm unmuted. Am I unmuted?
you're good.
All right. I am currently president-elect of NCTE. I'm a middle school teacher at Monte del Sol Charter School in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Wow.
I will, the magic hour for becoming president is in November, hopefully in Denver. And Valerie, I had no idea about your connection with Black Dove and Ana Castillo. My favorite chapter, and I heard her read it, is, I might have the title slightly wrong, but When I Died in Oaxaca. And if that's not the title of the chapter, that's what the chapter is about, dying in Oaxaca. And you and I'll have to talk about that sometime, Valerie. What I'm reading, the way I came into NCTE was I had attended, graduated from the Breadloaf School in 1987. One of my professors was Ken McCrory, a contemporary of Donald Graves, and I've made many references to writing Teachers and Children at Work in What I Do, by Donald Graves, of course. And Ken McCrory and Dixie Goswami had a workshop on voice at NCTE Los Angeles, 1987.
Wow.
And I went there to attend that session, and that's when that's how I came into NCTE. And then the following year or two, I had a proposal accepted in San Diego, and that's when I got invited to be on the Rainbow Strand, which is a group that advocated and still advocates for authors and literature that is marginalized. And that's how I got involved in the leadership role in NCTE. And then I served on several committees and eventually moved up to this. And like Valerie, there's not a chance in the world I would have ever been vice president or president of NCTE. That just was not that just was not in the works at all. So how it came to be is a mystery to me still. And let's see what else. What am I reading? Right now we are doing a segment in my curriculum on identity. It's called the Identity Project. And we recently had a passage, not the whole book, but a passage. This is for 7th grade, from When Women Were Birds by Terry Tempest Williams, that we used as a springboard for a writing prompt in my class. And then because it's National Poetry Week, month, I am focused on Pat Mora's My Own True Name, and specifically her poem called Dia Song, which is a song to reading in National Poetry Month. So those are the two things that I'm focused on this month.
Wow.
Great.
I have a
So-
long list of what I want to read next. Thank you all.
And here we are, with the leadership of NCTE. And I love the theme that just ran through all 4 of your answers. Like, how the hell did I get here? I think you're all super humble. I think there's real reasons why all 4 of you are occupying the positions that you are currently occupying. But let's talk for a minute about, this is a very hard time, right? To be an English teacher must be a challenging time for NCTE as well. I'm wondering if maybe we could have a little discussion about some of the resources that NCTE might offer teachers in a time of high stress like this. Any thoughts?
I can get us started a little bit. On Tuesdays, there's something called member gatherings, and I think those are happening at 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 Central, and so on. And they've been led in alternate weeks by Antero Garcia, pairing with an author who does a reading, and then Dietrich Price Dennis in alternate weeks. And this week it was Lori Hulse Anderson who paired with her. And I want to say on average, we've had about 130 members joining in.
Right.
And it feels like the warmest small group conversation you've ever been in. So don't be intimidated by the numbers. You can actually put your Zoom on speaker view, and the chat is going as people are chiming in and applauding, and you hear authors reading things that they've selected specifically to share with teachers because they resonate and they're just about life. And I think that's actually just so characteristic, like Penny was saying earlier about the National Council of Teachers of English and who we are. It's, for me, it's the reason that I keep coming back again and again is that sense of connection. So when you're a new teacher, it's hard and you're looking for connection. Or when you move schools, it's hard and you're looking for connection. And every year there are those things about your students that you're just trying to figure out, and you wish you had somebody to talk with in addition to the people around you. And there's that sense of connection. And now here's another way that NCTE is there in a time where we're just looking for people who you can connect, and you don't have to spend forever explaining yourself. They get you at a certain level. It was so fun yesterday or Tuesday when they asked that question and about, what are you reading right now? And the chat is just blowing up. It's like, I can't write this down fast enough. And to see people connecting with each other, saying, oh, we got to talk about this after the call, was really great.
That's great.
So Leah, how do members find these Tuesday gatherings?
I think
I believe that in the inbox that comes out, and then also direct emails to members as well. And I'm sure that I can double check while the next person's answering, but I'm pretty sure we can look on the website, and I'll look a minute and put that link in the chat if it's there.
Great.
Thank you. Anyone else? What's out there that teachers can add to their, box of tools for this crazy time of distance learning?
I just put a link in the chat to virtual learning on NCTE's website. So if you take a look at that, you will see many resources that NCTE is offering for virtual learning and professional development.
That's awesome. Thank you. I will put both of those on the Padlet. We collect things for people to find that go with these talks. So thank you for that.
We've also, we're hosting several speakers. So last week, Tony Wagner did maybe it was last week, I've lost track of dates, but Ernest Morel, because our Advocacy and Leadership Summit was canceled, he was one of the speakers. So that is going online. I want to say that's later this week or early next week. We also have Jason Reynolds and Ibram Kendi doing an event later in April that is going to be amazing. So I do think, I'm missing those connections with people. So the gatherings are nice. And I'm also missing learning from, experts and authors. So the combination for me while I'm trying to figure out online learning has been really good. I can pop in and just sit and listen to a gathering. And then I've got these amazing speakers that I can hear, even though I've had to, all the conferences we've been going to are canceled. So the speaker list is pretty amazing. So,
yeah.
And those, again, our social media, I think in the inbox is where members can find out about that.
That's
yeah.
fabulous.
And I want to add in NCTE's recent campaign, hashtag I'm with my students, where you have all of these educators, teachers, practitioners, researchers who are saying that we're standing with our students, we are with our students. And even if we are not physically present face-to-face, we are actually honoring and recognizing our students' languages, literacies, lives, and the hardship that comes with being separate and separated. I think that's really important. And in addition to hashtag I'm with my students, I think there's so many other smaller communities within NCTE who've actually been mobilizing effort And so one of the communities that I am intimately a part of is the Cultivating New Voices Among Scholars of Color community. And that's a group of literacy, language, and teacher education researchers and scholars and practitioners. We do have some folks over the last 20 years who are also practicing teachers. And so the point of that group is what we've been talking about behind the scenes since this pandemic has started. We've been having these private virtual conversations about how can we support each other? How can we actually have an effort where we're outreaching to teachers who we've worked with in the past and who we currently teach in our classrooms to provide them with resources. So it might be someone sending a book to a teacher, or someone sending some motivational poetry to teachers. And so we started to do that kind of mobilizing behind the scenes, but that definitely came from an NCTE group of people who've gathered together for 20 years. And I think it's amazing what people will do for each other.
Mm-hmm. Before we came on, I was talking to Kelly about how there are position statements and progressive thinking that's coming out of NCTE that I think is helping people feel supported when they want to change the all white male authors. You know, if they want to make changes at their school, they have these position papers you guys have been really bold about putting out there. And I think they offer support from the national organization for our profession that is necessary for many teachers to be able to do what they believe matches their beliefs. Can you talk a little bit about where do those position papers come from?
Thanks for noticing that, and for just sharing that as a resource with people. And that can go in the Padlet too, a link to the position statements.
Yeah.
So those position statements really highlight the expertise of our members working collectively in these position statement author groups. And something that former President Jocelyn Chadwick did was during her year as president, led us in saying, let's as an executive committee for NCTE commit that we're going to start reviewing the position statements that we already have and see what's missing, what do we need, and what needs to be refreshed, and is there anything that doesn't speak to today's context that needs to have a sunset. And so a lot of that work has been done to refresh, and I just need to applaud the members who've taken the lead on that and done very thorough work, considering who are the teachers and how can they use these not only to inform their own practice, but also to advocate with and for their students and in their context. So I think that's just very exciting and something that is ongoing. There's also some task force work that is happening. We had an executive committee meeting yesterday, and 2 new task forces that I think are very exciting and kind of lead the way for what our members need. One is on literacy and neurodiversity. So task force that's going to look at what does that mean? What's NCTE's distinctive way of being able to lead in that space? We have a lot of expertise, obviously, on literacy, other member organizations or associations on neurodiversity, but what is it that we want to understand about that, and how do we want to equip members? And then another on critical media literacy. So these will be announced more formally coming up soon, but they'll be, that work will be happening as a way to coordinate and keep on providing resources. And we did look at, what does it mean to do this kind of work in the time of COVID-19? But the ideas started earlier, and it's a piece of, we have an ongoing commitment to doing the work that NCTE does, albeit in somewhat different ways.
It's super, super helpful. I mean, I'll tell you in my own world that, this data about internet reading and just that position statement that you guys put out on internet reading was very helpful for teachers who are concerned that kids are fake reading and really doing real reading anymore. And so it gives, and Penny and I, when we've been on the road, we've been sharing statements as researchers to go back and to have some ammunition when they go back and try kids. So it really, really is helpful that the national organization has created those.
Yeah, I remember it was almost 20 years ago now, but you have a censorship committee, a censorship group. And we had 3 book challenges in the same year. And because I was a member and knew it existed, I immediately went to NCTE. And I can't tell you the support, the ongoing, okay, your board meeting's coming up. These are some suggestions for what to do next. That so many things I wouldn't have thought of. And I think we sometimes feel alone in the work, and yet I could tap into NCTE and I got all of the resources I needed. It guided our leadership in the district to run the meeting differently than I think they would have. And we ended up getting all of the challenges. We kept the books in the school. And I think that it was entirely due to the free services, but important intellectual conversations that NCTE has around all these issues.
I think if maybe we could talk a little bit about young teachers and how they might get involved. Always looking, Penny and I are on the other side of our careers.
We're not young, really?
I'm not putting this out there yet, but I'm saying I noticed lately, when I've attended younger teachers there, could we talk about opportunities for involvement for younger teachers?
My first suggestion is to attend a conference, and it might start with first attending an affiliate conference. And sometimes affiliate conferences offer opportunities either financially or some sort of moral support to attend the national conference. And that's one way in. There's also a program an NCTE called the Early Career Educators of Color cohort, which is a good way for teachers of color, young teachers of color early in their careers to get into NCTE and have some financial support to attend the conference. But I guess mostly I'd suggest register. $50 a year is not too bad for membership, and then try to attend the conference, particularly if it's close to you.
And don't you think that when a teacher looks at the call for proposals, local conference, I would sit at the New Hampshire one with 5 people in the room and be glad they came to listen to me. But the act of creating a presentation changed the way I thought about my work. I was so much more reflective and thoughtful about how is what I'm doing working or not, that I think that's one way that a teacher can, not only network with other people, but begin to realize their own potential and understandings.
And there's also from
I
the
agree with that. Go ahead, Alfredo.
Well, just one quick thing. From the concurrent sessions, there are so many best practices that you can borrow and steal from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to add in, Penny, I totally agree with that. It's this idea that we don't teach in silos, and we all know we don't. And we rely on folks who have been teaching longer than we have been and folks who've been teaching not as long. And so how do we get to a point where, as an organization, I really believe that teachers are supported and welcomed. It also allows newer teachers to see other teachers who are also newer. They can attend the first timers breakfast or the breakfast for first time attendees. That's an amazing event, although it's at 7 o'clock, but that's an amazing event.
It is.
And how they are able to just have open conversations. The part that you mentioned about being able to be reflective when folks are putting together their presentations. I just remember working with a lot of new teachers and the excitement but stress of how do I write this thing, and being able to have conversations across different teachers, whether they've been in the field for a year or for 8 years, and teacher educators and researchers. I just think that that's part of the joy of entering into a professional organization like NCTE, because everywhere you look, there is someone willing to support anything that you think is a good idea when it comes to teaching. And I think that's a beautiful part of this organization.
Yeah, and I think that's so true about everywhere you look. And, you know, as people, we often hang back and wait for someone else to invite us to do something, but everyone's hanging back. And so if you reach out and you say, wow, I just attended your session and that was so exciting, I'd like to talk more about this. And then that allows, you know, set up a Zoom call for later on. Now we know all know how to do that. It allows you to do things like say, would you like to propose, I know somebody, you know somebody, would you like to propose a session together at our local affiliate or at the next national convention, do something like that together, find ways to invite people in and say, you know, it's not a lifetime commitment, but I'd like to try a little writing group for, you know, 2 or 3 months and see how it goes. Again, I know somebody, you know somebody, can we pull people together? That's how I'd say NCTE kind of in the background is just this fiber that holds you together. The people are there and you can make those connections that just sustain you for years and years, and have the people who you think with and talk about your teaching with and you write with and you do research with, and you just go out and have dinner and have drinks and commiserate and get to know and love.
You could end up a leader.
That's right.
Happen, be careful.
You could end up president.
That's right.
That happens when you start to drop in on committee meetings and you volunteer for things.
And not to put you on the spot, Franki, because I'm not a host. I'm just
But
asking.
you're going to anyhow.
So, you know, I want you to, if you don't mind, like, how does this translate into us thinking about elementary educators and early childhood educators in terms of supporting them to really be a part of NCTE? I think you have a lot of experience with thinking about the earlier ages and how some teachers might feel like they should, but they don't know if they should. What do you think about that?
Right. And I do think it's funny because people say that's not for elementary. And Bonnie Chambers being like my first or second year teaching, and I never saw it as not for elementary because she just kind of swooped me into the elementary people. I think there's an amazing group of elementary people who are part of NCTE and who have sustained me for 30 years. I think there's, you know, I think about the connections and the conventions, which has been huge. But then I think like the gathering that I was on the other day, I just listened to what people were saying. And if somebody said something that connected to me, I found them on Twitter really fast and I'm following them. And so, you know, I think NCT is about connections. And Valerie, like the whole, you know, the fact that elementary and middle school and secondary and teacher educators and college and authors and, you know, publishers, we're all kind of one community working toward the same thing. So I think it's about just finding the people who you connect with who will keep you grounded. And I think that might be going to convention, but then I also think it might be listening in on a Twitter chat and then finding 3 or 4 people that you might want to message later, or sitting in on a gathering and, you know, finding some people there, because I think it's that's made us come back. I think it's the people that we've met that have kept us grounded, and convention is definitely a place to do that. But elementary, there's definitely a huge cohort of us who are, you know, working really hard to make sure, you know, classrooms are right for kids that are younger. So yeah, but I definitely think it's the connections and the people. And every time someone says that, I'm like, oh yeah, I always forget that elementary people don't know, but it's like it's a big hidden secret. It's a pretty amazing group of elementary people.
Well, you know what happens at the convention that I love is that you're sitting there, you don't know who's on either side of you. This person teaches 3rd grade and this one's a college professor. And all of a sudden you're having a conversation about the same thing, poetry or mentor texts, but you're seeing it through the lens of different roles in different locations. And the conference has always, after I went the first time, I said, this has to be a part of our budget. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I need to go every year because the energy of NCTE will carry me for months. Mm-hmm. I have it in my notebook. I have it just inside of me. And that's such an important thing for teachers.
Yeah. It is a shot of adrenaline in the fall. And everything that Franki just said in all of those connections. But to me, it's to me, to be a teacher kind of means you should join a professional organization of teachers. And I get it that you know, membership can be a financial problem for some people, but if you can afford it, I just think it comes in part and parcel with being a professional teacher. And I'm 35 years in. I got to tell you, when the English arrives in my mail, you know, or any journal from any organizations that I still, you know, belong to, it is part of a continual lifelong being a professional teacher, and nothing in my professional teaching line more than NCTE. So to have you four here today is a thrill for us. And I just want to thank you so much for all the teachers that you have supported and helped.
You guys have given so much time to this profession. I know because I've done minor roles in NCTE, and there are a lot of meetings and a lot of work that people don't see behind the scenes, and you put on these incredible conferences for us. So I just want to thank you all for your commitment to NCTE, to other teachers, and for joining us today, because it was a thrill to meet you all in one place.
And we hope we'll see you all in Denver in November. We're already psyched about our work, our breakout that we've planned, and so already looking. So hopefully it'll be safe for everyone to attend, and we'll get back together.
All right.
Thank you so much.
guys. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you.